God, as we come together tonight for the city of Waterville, we pause to ask you to be with us and guide our way. May your spirit of peace surround all we say and do this evening. We ask for your strength to do what is best for the good of Waterville. Lord God, as servants of your people, we pray that you grant us a share of your wisdom. Amen.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Bruno?
Here.
Mrs. Bruno?
Here.
Mr. Fry?
Here.
Mayor Brody?
Here.
Mr. Rosick?
Here.
Mr. Pedro?
Here.
Mrs. Duncan?
Here.
Thank you. This evening we have one of our favorite nights of the year, where our fire station, our Waterville Fire Association joins us with a lot of students, and we get to congratulate them. But I'll ask our fire chief to start the introductions.
Well, I'd like to welcome all of you and thank you for applying. But I'm going to turn it over to Captain Beekes with the Waterville Fire Association to present the scholarships.
I told some of the students they need to be ready for their speech.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening. Mayor Brody, Administrator Gokenauer, Council, Department heads, members of the Waterville Fire Department and the Association, the scholarship recipients, their families, and any of the public in attendance. It's once again that time of the year that we get to present these scholarships on behalf of the Waterville Fire Association. Also on behalf of the Carl Conrad family. The association is a separate entity, for the ones who don't know, of the department, and those association monies that we were able to give out this evening were from years of hard work long before I started in 1992. The monies at that time were raised from different carnivals, the love of the citizens to give back through memorials of departed ones on behalf of the citizens and their families. This year in 2019, we're excited we're able to give out 6 scholarships, 5 from the investments of the Waterville Fire Association and 1 on behalf of the Carl Conrad family. Carl was a member of the Waterville Fire Department and previous chief when Waterville was a village for over 40 years serving its residents. Upon his passing, his family decided to take the memorial monies given and put those into a memorial fund that the Waterville Fire Association administers the money to and has the good fortune to select a student to receive an award on behalf of Carl Conrad each and every year. With the information I've just provided, we would like to do this year's presentations. The scholarships are all in the amount of $500. They're paid directly to the school, not the student, but of the student's choice. The students will be contacted approximately 4 to 6 weeks prior to their start of school. We want to make sure that their schools did not change and that their student numbers are valid. This is also given in response for anyone who lives within the Waterville fire response area, not just the Anthony Wayne school system. Will the following students join me at the podium when their names are called? First of all, receiving from Waterville Fire Association is Kylie Saloff. Kylie will be attending the University of Toledo, and she'll be majoring in dermatology. Kylie, if you'd please go to the center of the... Secondly, we have Hans Rudolph. Hans. Now listen, Hans will be attending the Ohio State University, and he'll be majoring in product design. Zachary Atkinson. Zachary will be attending Ohio University, currently undecided for his major. Alexa Freese. Alexa will attend Findlay University, majoring in the animal sciences. And the last for the Waterville Fire Association is Alexandra Burchesky. Alexandra will attend the University of Toledo, and she will major in forensic sciences. This concludes the scholarship recipients for the Waterville Fire Association. If you'd please all remain standing. I'd like to ask any members of the Carl Conrad family who are here if they want to join me at the podium, and or if not, if they'd care to stand in place and be recognized on behalf of Carl. Arlene, thank you so very much. Chosen this year on behalf of the Carl Conrad family is Anna Jones. Anna will be attending either Miami of Ohio or the University of Arizona, and she will major in the environmental sciences. On behalf of the scholarship committee, members Randy King to my right, Dean Kakuthi, who could not be with us this evening, retired member and our treasurer, Keith Moosman, myself and every member of the Waterville Fire Department and the association, we would like to commend the students on their time and perseverance over their years in school. We wish them all the best in their future endeavors, and we'd also like to thank everyone present at this meeting for allowing these presentations to take place. Congratulations and best wishes. The photos will be taken outside at our apparatus. Any questions for the students or parents will be answered at that time. Best wishes and congratulations once again. Mrs. Duncan?
Where do you currently go to school? Everybody goes to Anthony Wayne. Good.
I didn't want to mention that. I told the
I think
students
that's
just
great.
this evening, 5 minutes before presentation, that they may have a 5-minute dissertation. But, we'll
I know,
hold
I'd like
that
to know-
lightly on them. Any other members of council, mayor, administrator? Anyone, any
Congratulations,
questions?
guys. We wish you well and work hard, and we hope to see you back in Waterville for sure. So, but great job. That's a big accomplishment for all of you.
Very good. Well, congratulations again. And at this point, students and parents, you're welcome to join us out at the apparatus for photos. Thanks again.
That's so cool.
Someone said that a couple years ago, and I asked them about it. I guess it's like a study of, well, yeah, so like the making of cosmetics.
The 21st.
Yeah. So it would be like
A week from
the people that are gonna work
Did
with
we already approve those?
All right.
Should I do both of them?
Maybe in the business college sometime, you know? Maybe.
Oh, there it is. There it is. Okay.
We approved the minutes for the last joint meeting at the,
Did we?
Right.
For that one? Okay. Crowd has thinned a little now.
Very nice.
All right. Moving on with our agenda with a smaller crowd. We have the approval of minutes from our regular and special meetings, April 22nd and April 29th, 2019. We need a motion.
So moved.
second.
Are there any changes or corrections to either set of minutes or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Just technically, Mayor, I'll abstain for the 22nd and vote yes for the 29th.
All right, thank you. Next, we have a proclamation, and I am going to read this, so people be aware it's going on. It's going on later this summer. It's for the 225th anniversary of Fallen Timbers. Whereas we, the citizens of the city of Waterville, are proud of our local heritage, whereas August 20th, 2019 will be the 225th anniversary of the Battle of Fallen Timbers, not only one of the most important events in history of Northwest Ohio, but also the United States, and whereas the victory of the newly created United States Army led by General Anthony Wayne over the British Army and their Native American allies ensured the continued control of the Northwest Territories by the United States and the eventual statehood of Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, whereas the Fallen Timbers Battlefield Preservation Commission has been instrumental in preserving and promoting the importance of the Fallen Timbers Battlefield, which led to its dedication as a National Historic Site in 1999. Now therefore, I, Lori A. Brody, as Mayor of the City of Waterville, do hereby proclaim and celebrate the 225th anniversary of the Battle of Fallen Timbers and recognize the efforts of the Fallen Timbers Battlefield Preservation Commission in preserving, protecting, and promoting the importance of this site as part of our local and national heritage. So keep that in mind this summer. It's a big milestone. Next, we have citizens' comments, and I do have one from Mark. Do you mind? Yeah, you can do that, and then go to the podium to state your name. But yeah, if you have something, we can hand it out. Thank you. If you don't mind stating your name and your address.
Mark Pelagic, 876 Cherry Lane. I thank you all for letting me speak, and I want to thank Kenny Blair. He's been very helpful throughout this process, and everybody that I talked to in the administration. Anytime I made a phone call to Waterville, it was very responsive. It was excellent. My wife and I live at 876 Cherry, like I said, and we moved there 2016. 2017 summer-ish, we started to realize we had a lot of standing water in our backyard. I'm sure you guys have heard this a million times, different people coming in to say this. I didn't want to be here today. I hate to say took matters in my own hand, but I did some landscaping, some excavating to clear a path per Kenny's recommendation between my backyard. Actually, it's interesting, Zach Atkinson, his parents are my neighbors, and it's their backyard. They allowed me to go through to get to this catch basin that we discovered along the way was back there, located by Kenny. And so it was just a small little swale that I dug, and the water from my backyard released into the catch basin. It was effective this spring. It came to my neighbor's attention behind us. If you look at the maps help a little bit, show you a diagram of where we're at in relation to the catch basin. We are 876 Cherry, and it's one house over and on another person's property.
It's all one.
So recently that's been filled in by a neighbor on the other side of the Atkinson's or Minnie's property is there. And it's completely backed our yard up again. And I didn't want it to come to this, but this is why you guys are here. So it's not really my place to make that decision. It's really up to you, and I hope you guys could help us out. We're hoping to have it cleared out. The material they put in the swale has blocked our ability to get water out.
Well, I might point out from a legal perspective that owners owe each other a duty not to take their water and place it on an adjoining property. Pre-existing, you may have to deal with, but if they have made changes, raised their yard, etc., your cause of action is purely civil between neighbors over putting water that should be absorbed in their yard or taken to a drain. You sue them, quite frankly, or write them. The city does not resolve drainage problems on private property between neighbors.
And I'm glad you clarified it, because we didn't really know who to go to, and thank you for that. I guess we're going to have to pursue those channels then.
Yeah, normally, hopefully, with decent neighbors, everybody is looking at a fairly similar property, and you kind of get together and talk your way through something that works for everybody and doesn't offend anybody. Normally, it's a swale or putting in drainage tiles to it and covering it at the same level, but cities can't be involved in repairing private property drainage, and what happens unfortunately is over the years A lot of people do different plantings, put in raised beds, don't think about the consequence, put in the wrong type of plants, whatever, and it changes the drainage
Yep.
that might have been
And that's
there
exactly what
when
happened.
the subdivision was laid out.
Okay. Okay, so we'll have to pursue those channels.
Come on up and just state your name and your address.
My name is Ryan Minnie, and I live at 874 Cherry Lane, right next to Mark. From what I could tell what happened, and I've lived there almost 12 years now, is the neighbor directly behind me, I believe it's 937 Freedom.
Oh, Liberty.
Okay, sorry. I know how to get there, I just don't know all the But anyways, they purposely blocked this well in the easement. There's a utility pole in this area. It's between our fences, and I believe this to be not private property, but would that not be the city's property?
No, it would normally be, and again, what you may want to do is go to Lucas County if you didn't get a bunch of crazy stuff when you bought the property. But when a developer lays out the plat, they lay out the common area, the utility area for underground and overhead, and they'll lay out the drainage that's supposed to happen to the catch basins between the various lots in the subdivision. Most people don't go back and look at this stuff. You hope everybody's decent, but every once in a while you run into the proverbial I don't care, I'm doing what I want person. Then you may have to go back and get those things, because if it is a designated easement area for utilities and or drainage, you're all entitled to use it, you're stuck maintaining it, but it is an easement on your property to accommodate those utilities or the drainage. And that's how you can get at the original intention through the Lucas County auditor. They have the recorded plats of these subdivisions, even if they're old. That'll tell you what that area is. It is normally not city property because we have no vested interest, nor can we get in there through people's yards. What you'll see occasionally is a utility truck, and if you put in trees, which is your right, but they're in their way, they just come lop the tops off them and they die. So you want to check that easement area that was perhaps designed for utilities and drainage in the rear of all your yards in the subdivision.
Okay. I'd like to add that it's also flooded several other neighbors that have never had a problem before.
Well, you have commonality of interest. I would certainly go door to door and then see if either the other subdivision has a homeowners association, or write a nice collective letter telling the offending person, hey, we appreciate the fact that you wanted to do these things, but you're flooding all your neighbors' yards. Can we get together and talk about opening up this drainage so everybody can live as good neighbors? I mean, if he's flooding everybody, he's gonna see the mosquitoes too, so you might point out the usage of his
it was a
deck.
deliberate action to
We did go there.
purposely to flood this area. There was no reason, there was no issue in his lawn. His
Well,
bank is much higher. He purposely came outside his fence, put a stone in there, added dirt, and now we're all underwater.
You've got one of those could be problem people.
Yeah.
You'll have to figure out how to deal.
Yeah. Appreciate your time.
Ryan, could you spell your last name?
Minnie, M-I-N-N-I.
And
Mark?
Mark?
Pawlacek, P-A-W-L-A-C-Z-Y-K.
I never would have got that. Thank you.
Just like it sounds.
And if I could just ask one quick question, would a zoning issue, like with a fence and things of that nature, does that fall under the city or the county or?
Well, again, fences were to have been permitted, and there are regulations where the fence is to be put in relationship to the property line. So if you can get the accurate descriptions and they got a permit and they violated it.
The fence is backwards, so the unfinished side is facing outward.
Those may be zoning issues. I don't know when it was permitted or any history. Yeah, normally the good side of the fence is supposed to face your neighbor, not your house. And whether it's a trespass or not can only be determined, quite frankly, by a survey or a location of the pegs, which he's probably buried under 2 feet of dirt from the sounds of it.
That would
So,
be in your documents, or you can get them from the auditor. the actual.
Yeah, unfortunately, in Waterville, we don't regulate that type of fencing issue. Whether the side is facing the neighbor or facing the house that owns the fence. You have to put it on your property. You can't put it on someone else's property. You can put a fence in an easement. As the law director mentioned, you have to move it if the utility that is in there needs to get access to it. But it is still the property owner's property. Easement is only for utility or drainage purposes. That's all that is allowed to be. It's still that person's property. So the neighbor, that's still their property. If that's where the easement is, where you're describing. So, but unfortunately, no, we don't regulate that type of thing.
Okay. And then to find the plot lines, who do you contact? Is that a private issue? Or?
The one way to find out where your property line is, unfortunately, is to have it surveyed. And that's really the legal way to do it.
Yeah. The plat will give you dimensions of the lot, but the dimensions without identifying landmarks or the pegs probably aren't gonna help you very much. If you wanted to economize on the money, you would pick the place where you think it's most egregious, have the person who has the property that might be encroached on be the one to get the survey. And you might pool your efforts collectively, since it's now become a collective problem, and may be faced with that type of potential liability. The person will be more reasonable. No guarantees.
I think so. Okay, well,
Thank you for your time.
I do have a quick question for Kenny. So, the catch basin itself, who maintains the catch basin? The catch basin? Who maintains that?
The property owners? The
Maintain.
catch basin?
That's okay. And where does the basin drain? What does that drain into?
It picks up about 4 houses and it runs out to the storm.
So it's connected to our
Storm sewers.
storm sewers underneath?
Yeah, runs out to the road.
Okay, and do we have a record of like the last time that was, how old that is? That would be,
Probably mid-60s, early 60s when the houses were built.
okay.
It's probably not the basin not working as much as the something in the way.
Well, sure, the
Kenny,
swale
can we,
sounds like.
because there was
Yeah.
an issue with the county, because when I was looking at the county maps for the catch basins, you recall that we did not locate that one's not located on the county map? And that it was that you came out and scoped and found that one?
I'll tell you what, Mark, we can look at our drainage plan.
Yeah.
We have
See
it in
what that
mind.
looks like.
Mm-hmm,
That may be helpful, then I can bring that over to you so you can take a look at it.
yeah. I need something to take to the county, because right now that's invisible on there, like
On
they,
there.
on their map, because if you look at the drainage plan that I made, I found one that's across the street, and I was trying to tie into that one, and that's when Kenny's like, well, wait a minute, you got one house down. So I was thinking I was gonna have to pursue this whole other avenue that way when we said, so I don't know how we show Lucas County that there is one there that we can access. Yeah.
I'll get a contact there.
All right, thank you. That's a
Doesn't
good
Lucas County have records of all that as well?
I don't know, when you plat out these properties, it may not necessarily have a yard drainer.
And they weren't required, like now it's different. They have to have them more often. So we have flooding in my newer neighborhood
Mm-hmm.
by the fire station,
Yeah.
completely flooded. And it depends on the people. The other street's higher behind me. Every time the last flooded basements on my street.
Oh, wow.
Every time the yard is changed by somebody, it doesn't flow. But now there would have been, if my neighborhood were built now, then in the 90s, there would have been more drains. Every 2, but we have 6 houses going
Wow.
to 1, built in the 90s, mid-90s. So we have the same kind of issue. And then when it rains, like it did lately, which is highly unusual,
Yeah.
but you definitely have something blocking it. But when it does that, it's just terrible. There's like nothing, nothing takes care of it.
No.
It's- Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Let me add one thing.
Mhm.
You guys come up with, well, who's gonna be involved with this? If you get with us, we'll be helpful to kind of walk you through what's the best way of taking care of it.
Awesome, yeah.
We do have ours platted out in the plan that we had it studied not too many years ago, so we should know where everything is.
Excellent.
So we can. Sorry about that. I
No,
hope it,
thank you.
Hope
I
it dries
appreciate
up soon too. Good luck.
Hope it stops raining.
Yeah, stop raining too.
Needs to stop raining.
Do we have any other citizen comments?
Anybody?
All right, staff reports our administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to mention one item that, in my report, the Public Works Director and I had the opportunity to meet with the representatives of the U.S. Geological Survey about the future location of the Maumee River, I guess you could, for a better word, the flooding gauge. It's currently on the existing bridge, and in our discussions, we walked around the area down by the river to see a place where it might be located. And one of the things they did mention is that we discussed the future park plans and things like that, and they brought up that they have this interactive flood gauge that they'd be willing to put in the park as like a for the public, and you could be in the park and it would constantly read what the river level was. And so we're going to be pursuing that, I think, and I think it'd be a good amenity for the park when it's developed. Is, you know, we have a little area that, you know, you can learn about the river and how, you know, what's flood stage and what isn't, and the different levels. And so with that was a very productive meeting, and they came from Cincinnati, and so I just wanted to mention that. And then if there is any other questions, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Gokenauer. I think that'd be a much better measure than Barb's yard down there.
Yeah. We're a foot off.
No, I think that sounds good. Any questions for Mr. Gokenauer? Yes, Tim.
Just a couple. That was one. Thank you. I noticed that you and Kenny had met with the new disposal refuge company. Just wondering how that's going. Is there any other?
Well, we weren't happy with their service, you know, initially, and they've been at it about a month, and they haven't been getting better. So we, I guess for a better word, we sent them a nasty letter, and we had some meetings with them, and I think that the instances of missed houses and recycling, I mean, it was quite a bit at the beginning, and now it's kind of whittled down, and apparently we haven't had any today, so that's a good thing. So I guess I'm hoping that, you know, they finally figured out where everything is in town, and their service will improve. And but we did mention that, you know, it is a one-year contract, and if the service doesn't improve, you know, we will be putting it out to bid. We have the decision to put it out to bid in a year's time, so.
All right, good. And then just two other ones. I noticed that saw the response to Dave Roman about his house. Is the backup alarm up and running now on that site on River Road?
We have estimates to replace the alarm. Let's see, it's the remote telemetry unit is being replaced, and then there's also a new float switch we're going to be installing, and then if you're familiar with Lucas County, out in the suburbs, you see these buildings that have lights on them, red lights and green and red lights, and you know, if the red light is on, that means the pumping station's down, it's not working, and that's the other thing that we're going to do is install that there, and then if you see that light and we don't get an alarm at the Public Works Department, then we'll know that there's something wrong and we need to figure out what that is. So those are the things that we're doing to, I guess, improve or fix the River Road pump station.
Lastly, in number 20, about the advertisement for the position in this case, the Blade, but I imagine there's other media like NOMA and other potential spots. I just wondered how that's going.
Well, we have gotten some resumes in, and hopefully we'll be interviewing next week.
All right, good. Thank you. Thanks, John.
Yep.
Just
Other
one quick one.
questions?
Yeah,
Yep.
getting back to Republic, I wondered if they changed the, seems like the schedule, the route maybe has changed, or the time of day that they come. We used to be the first house. Now we really don't know when they're gonna show up, so.
Well,
They-
I know one thing that people had to get used to is, well, you know, students came at a certain time for 5 years, and now, you know, if they came in the morning now, Republic comes at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and, you know, I guess in the contract, there's not a whole lot we can do there, but I think they've adjusted their route a little bit because of the problems that they were having, and I think it was for the better, I think.
Yeah. Okay, well, just curious. Must be coming in from the other side of town or something.
We used to be first, and yeah, they're not 7 a.m. anymore. Any other questions for the administrator? All right. Law Director, Mr. Dombey.
No report tonight, Your Honor.
Mr. Gokenauer, Finance Director still.
I guess I'd like to yield my time to the
Treasurer.
city treasurer.
Mr. Schultz.
Is that a promotion?
Yeah. It's a full-time job, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council, Mr. Gokenauer. I did attach, or I put a draft treasurer's report on everybody's desk this evening. I know it's been a couple meetings since we've had a finance report and or a treasurer's report, so I figured I at least wanted to come up and explain to you what's happening and give you a draft so you're not concerned. You can see that I did do the draft with the March of 18 and March of 19 numbers as we have them right now, so you can see everything is fine. Okay, as you know, we've been going through a software conversion, and as always happens in those, you have issues with the conversions. We've been through we've gotten most of the issues cleared out and taken care of. Right now, just to give you some a sense for this, we have $3,000 of unreconciled differences on $6.1 million, okay? So we're real close. To John's credit, he doesn't want to close a month here until we get pretty good with figuring out what that extra amount is in the big scheme of things. So again, I thought it was worth me at least coming up saying, we don't have the month closed. I'm not concerned about it. We just have to figure out what those reconciling items are for those for that time frame. So I think we're fine. We'll get it figured out. But again, pretty much every one of these numbers, with the exception of the main payroll account, which we're up by $3,000, and the bank says we have more money than we say we do. So that's a good problem. So once again, I do just still have it as a draft because we haven't closed the month, but I'm confident we'll get that figured out. So
Thank you. Any questions? Thanks for the
okay,
update.
thank you.
Next, we have our police chief.
Good evening, council members. A couple of things tonight. Actually, my list is longer than it normally is. Drug take back. We had it back at the end of April, and the total for the Anthony Wayne area was 288 pounds. This was all the sites together. Our site at Kroger took in a total of 95 pounds. 29 of that came from our drug drop box, but Chief made a little boo-boo. I came in on that Saturday morning to get the drugs out of the property room and take them to the site and drop them off, and I missed a whole box with 38 pounds sitting in there that I didn't see. So the next drug drop take back day in October, we're already 38 pounds ahead, so they'll be turned in next time. So the number's actually a little higher than that. The drug drop box usually does garner a lot of drugs, so the 29 pounds seemed a little light, and then I walked back there with the architect for what will be my third item, and happened to see that box and thought, nothing I can do about it now. So, Safety City is July 15th through 19th. I looked at the sign-up book before I came over. There are still a lot of spots open, but we do tend to get a flurry as it gets close. So I'm not concerned about that at all. We're still very early on that. I mentioned the architect. We've been working with the same architect that's working on the square over here, Ed Glowicki, to redesign the locker room area back there where the women have their locker room. What they've had for years is an old holding cell, and it's pretty tight back there. No restroom of theirs. They have to come over here where the male officers have a nice locker room with restrooms and even a shower, which doesn't get used all that much. So we've been trying to upgrade their area, so we treat the girls and the boys pretty much the same. So we're meeting with him next Monday, Kenny and I are, to go over the plans before he starts doing permits, but it's going to incorporate moving their locker room into what is now the property room, then incorporating that bathroom back there into part of their locker room, and then moving the property room into what's their locker room. The two rooms are about the same size, but it gives us a better location. Then also, we're gonna be replacing some carpeting back there and just making the area look better. But it gives them a little better area than the little closet they've got now. And the final item, the car computers. Last meeting, I was incorrect. I said the computers were at the county being programmed. They weren't in yet. I found out that the vendor had waited until they had a larger order before he ordered our 5 computers. So they came in last week. They're sitting in my office right now. We have to get our computer vendor in here, our tech people, to come in and install some virus protection on them. And then they will go down to the county, be programmed, and once they're finished, they'll go back out to DR Able to be installed in the car. So we're still in that process. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions?
And the drug take-back program, so, how many pounds total?
Total pounds for the Anthony Wayne area was 288. That's White House Fire, White House PD's drug drop box, and the site at Kroger, which is ours, Monclova Fire, and then their med box, and then Springfield Township.
And how often do you do that?
Twice a year,
Twice a year.
April and October.
I think that is just evidence of overprescribing, right? I mean, if you think about a little pill weighs less than,
Right.
I mean, that has no weight, infinitesimal, right?
I was
That's
surprised.
amazing.
I was surprised when I
That's
picked up that bag how heavy it was.
And they're supposed to no bottles are in there. You're supposed to
just
take
pills.
out all the pills.
No,
That's
in fact, we had as soon as when we first got the drug drop box installed a few years ago, I had one of Kenny's guys take and modify essentially the drop chute. He used some expanded metal like screen and welded it in place. You can't put bottles in there. You have to pour the pills in.
Wow,
So,
that is
That's a lot.
shocking. That's alarming, quite frankly.
yes, it is.
Well, good, thank you.
Any other comments? Thank you, Chief. Next, we have our Fire Chief.
Good evening. You all have a copy of my report. Just a few things to add on it. We took delivery of 2 LifePak 15 monitors. We'll be getting training on those Tuesday. So we'll be getting 2 cardiac monitors into service by the end of the month. So that's a huge advantage for us. We also got our CADs. We had a little dilemma with the vendor on ours also. We ordered through a different company, and they went ahead and delivered them to DR Able instead of us. So we went ahead and we've now collected those a week later. Ours are at the county getting programmed now. Our air cards are active, so as soon as the county gets done with ours, DR Able will come out to our station and install ours. We're working on the preventative maintenance of all of our apparatus right now. Currently, we're going to work with Ohio Cat when they go in one at a time. Engine 78 has been in for several days. It's currently there now still. They're trying to repack the pump on that. And currently none of our apparatus passed the pump test. All of the apparatus failed. They would not hold suction on the prime. So we'll work with CAT to get that taken care of, and hopefully when they go in one at a time, we'll get those pumps repaired to pull a vacuum. Worked with Mr. Gokenauer on the delivery of the Nexus money. That's currently going to get us 5 more sets of gear, along with some miscellaneous items. It will give us 5 complete sets head to toe. And then the rest will get a few extra pairs of boots, some gloves, and a few extra carcinogen and hoods. One more thing that has recently come down the pike is Class B foam disposal. So that's something that we'll work with Mr. Gokenauer to try to get into the budget next year. I went to the Northwest Fire Chiefs meeting, and this is becoming a problem statewide. No one will take the stuff, and it has to be incinerated, and the people that will take it want a very large amount of money to take care of it, and we have a whole pallet to get rid of. But we're not the only department facing that. There's several other departments with like 55-gallon drums of it. Good luck to them.
What is
but,
it you're
yeah.
trying to unload?
Class B foam. It's what you use to put out fires that contain fuels, petroleum-based products. So diesel, gasoline, kerosene, things of that nature. It can also be used in home firefighting for structures. When the structure gets to the point where there's what they call hidden fires, you can blanket it with foam and take the oxygen away from it. But they found that it's very corrosive stuff and over the years, and so now it's very hard to get rid of.
Isn't that used a lot in car wrecks? If you have accidents
If
with
the
it?
car catches on fire, yes,
Yeah,
it's used
that's when I've seen it.
very
Okay.
often in car fires, yes, because it's very effective for that. Very effective. It's used in aircraft, a lot of different things like that, yeah. They used it to put the log cabin fire out in Napoleon. They were dealing with it there, so I mean, it does get used. It is a necessity, but it's one of those necessary evils, I guess. We need it, but it's hard to get rid of once it expires.
Is it a new product?
Oh no, this has been around longer.
So
than
we've
I
been
have.
recycling it for a long time.
Well, you used to be able to get rid of it easily, for one, and two, you used to use it for training. But you don't want to pollute the environment by spraying it into the grass when they learn that that does bad things. So
Okay.
to just spray it to get rid of it is not an effective measure anymore.
We're getting rid of unexpired that we, or expired that we didn't use.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so it's what
which
they
is-
have that we haven't used yet.
Yeah, it's stuff that we haven't used. It's really old at this time. But we used to get rid of it without a problem. And now it's recently become
Problem.
It's recently
Hazardous
become a
waste.
problem, yeah. And then the last thing was just the department's getting ready for a lot of events this year. With the mock council, 4th of July, Safety City, the air show, Broche de Boeuf, double line of duty death training, rescue task force training. So we have a lot of events coming up. If any of you are interested in any of them, let me know. And other than that, I don't have anything else. Other than we had 2 more apps get turned in, so we'll continue to keep that process going.
Have we lost anybody?
We have not lost anyone, so actually we're up quite a bit. The names on our board at the station is full, so, and actually so are the gear racks, so we're actually out of
How's
gear.
that week, how's the schedule?
The
with
schedule
part-timers?
is doing better.
Any holes in it still?
There are holes, but I still have 3 people that are so brand new that I'm not letting them take a shift on their own yet
Right.
until they're a little bit more trained up. Once those 3 are available,
Should be covered.
and then hiring in more, they'll go through the training process, and then it'll start to get, you know, better coverage. A couple people came to me and they said, you know, one gentleman dropped down contingent at his other job to pick up more hours for us, and he put in for a lot of hours. I scheduled him, and he came back to me and said, "Hey, Chief, I scheduled for these days, you didn't get them." I said, "Okay, let's sit down and talk about it." I showed him. By the time he does the 2 hours of training, his 4-hour Lucas County CE, and a 24-hour shift at work, he's done, 1 day a week. He's like, "Chief, I can work way more." He's at his 35 hours. So he said, "Wow, I didn't realize how quickly that came up." He says, "You know, we got 30 people, now I know why there's holes in the schedule." I said, "Well, yeah, because each one of them can only work a day a week." So
Any
try to
other-
keep hiring more numbers. The more numbers, the better off we are. Yes.
Yeah.
So you got, how'd the water rescue go for us on, a couple weeks ago on a Sunday?
Yeah.
I saw Mommy was in, you were in, Perrysburg was in.
Yeah, that was actually a big event. I was out to dinner with my family at Bangkok Kitchen in Maumee, so
Of course.
my response was delayed. It was in an unmarked car. So I didn't have my radio, so I had difficulty communicating, so I got there kind of late. It involved many agencies: Middleton Township, Perrysburg, Maumee, Monclova, us. We had 7 kayakers, only one wearing a life jacket, decided to go under the interurban bridge and then through the construction zone, and none of them survived in their kayaks. We did transport one to the hospital with potential for hypothermia, and the other 6 decided to sign against medical advice that they should go. And I know Division of Watercraft and ODNR met with them at the end. But, yeah, we did, it was quite a lengthy event, trying to track down where they were. They were scattered throughout the river, so. One Waterville citizen did help, before we got there. They happened to see someone screaming for help and were out cutting the grass and helped get one of them to shore, so. It's a good thing for good neighbors in a small town that are willing to help out.
So they all survived?
Yep, yeah, everyone survived.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just, again, to put it out there, I know I put it out in the article in the Maumee training, especially during construction with man-made, control of the river. It's not advised to go kayaking through it, at least until we can get the bridge construction done and get the river back to its natural flow pattern, because it's not doing what it wants to do right now.
Doug,
Yes.
do you know where they went into the water?
I do not. I had asked the park ranger if the boat launch was open at Farnsworth, because most of the time that's where they enter, because it's easy access. He said yes, it was open, that the water was still below the level that they would close it at. So even though that it's moving swiftly and it's up, it's not up enough to close the boat launch. So the Metro Parks weren't going to cite them.
So I guess, does it make sense that we is a loose term, but do we put some kind of signage there? And then isn't there a commercial a kayak company works with the district, the Metro Parks, that they should be aware they really can't come down to Waterville?
They can. You can't stop them. Idiots will be idiots. I see them go by the house every day. River Lures out of Grand Rapids was the commercial outfit.
Yeah, okay.
And they have a pull-out across from me at Otsego Park where most people get out, because normally the water's there down at the rapids, but right now you can shoot everything all the way to Perrysburg if you want. The river's up that high. Just gotta remember, when you see a lot of white water, there's a rock there, and these people don't seem to understand that. We cannot protect the world, unfortunately, from the idiots that are willing to put everybody at risk, including our safety personnel.
Right.
And I think the parks are, well, that's within the city, so you could ask them to put up a sign, but obviously if they say it isn't dangerous enough, they're gonna go in.
Yeah, the Parks Service does stay in contact with us. They call when they close and open the launch. And they do close it. It's already been closed, I think, 3 or 4 times already this year.
Because of the rain.
And if you go around it when it is closed, that is a citable offense if you use that launch. Now, there are other launches that you can use. I mean, it's a waterway that no different than Lake Erie. I mean, they can put small craft advisories out, but you can use the waterway anyway.
I would think people can go from their backyard as well.
Right.
Yes,
So,
correct. They
I
can
mean,
go
you
through their
can't,
own-
you can't monitor
So
all
did you
that.
put the boat in? Did we put the boat in?
We ended up not putting our boat in. They initially went to the Farnsworth boat launch because that was where the call came in. But by the time there were multiple 911 calls, by the time they could track down where they were, we went ahead. They had already dispatched farther down because the river was moving so quickly
Right.
that we weren't sure even if we could catch them. And even if we did launch at the Farnsworth boat launch, even with our Rescue 1 boat, making it through the interurban bridge and through that construction zone is a very difficult and tedious task. And with the rate that the water was going, they were going to end up well past Maumee and into Perrysburg before we could actually physically navigate those waters. So what they ended up doing was when they found out that they already passed the Waterville Bridge,
Yep.
from the dispatchers stating multiple calls past the bridge,
Right.
they ended up bringing the boat back up and chasing down river and ended up making shore-based rescues on our end. Maumee and Perrysburg played with Monclova, played catch a kayak, if you will. And
Right.
they were down river, 3 boats circling, catching them as they came
by.
through. We were able to get most of the people out of the water up into the Waterville area. They either A, climbed themselves out, or B, were shore rescued. So we didn't actually have to launch, but that was probably to our benefit, to be honest.
Right.
That water is really high, even with our boat. It's not an easy task.
Well, these guys had quite a few people out trying to take care of them, so I was curious whether or not they got cited, because it was,
That I can't answer on the citation, but I do know that
they
there
got
were a
spoken
few
to.
officers that met with them.
Yeah.
So.
So did they all capsize at the dam, the man-made dam here at our bridge? Is that what
From the information that I gathered, and again, I wasn't there at the start of the rescue, so I missed out on quite a bit. From what I gathered from Chief George and Chief Bernhardt, who ran the incident, they dumped somewhere near the interurban bridge, one of them. The others tried to assist, and by the time they got to the Waterville Bridge, the others had lost their ability to function, and so then they all were in the water. And 1 out of 7 was wearing a life jacket.
Well, switching gears real quick.
Sure.
I have a quick question. You had mentioned that some kind of hose failed, some apparatus in testing.
Yes,
What was that?
so-
Can you go over that again?
Yeah, so each one of our apparatus, the tower, our frontline engine, and our second due engine did not pass pump testing.
Pump, so this is the hose?
Nope, pump. This is
pump.
this is the apparatus. This is the actual vehicle itself did not pass pump tests. All 3 of them did not.
When was the last time we had them tested?
Every year.
Every year, so
Yep.
once a year.
So this year, what they did not pass was they wouldn't hold a vacuum. So what that means is if you do not have a secure water source, it takes a vacuum. It takes the amount of what they measure in Hg, which is units of mercury. So it's how much it can draw water when it doesn't have water coming to it. So what that means is if you're in a non-hydrogen area and you set up dump tanks, you have to get the water to the pump somehow. So it works just like your home vacuum does. You draw what's called a prime, and the pump works in reverse. Instead of pumping out, it's starting to draw in. Once the water comes in, the pump has to maintain a vacuum in order to keep the water going out the other side. And none of our apparatus were able to maintain the vacuum for long enough. We'll work with CAT on that, and I worked with their mechanic. I already spoke with them. He said one of them was just barely out of limits, so he thinks maybe a retest might actually get that one to pass. The other 2, it's hard to say. It could be anywhere from a seal on the front of it where it vacuums in to the pump itself is just old and they won't pull the prime anymore. Engine 78 is the one that's been in for 2 days, and it's going to be in for another 2 days. That's the one they're rebuilding the packing on the pump. Maybe after that, they're going to retest that engine. Maybe that'll pull a prime enough to sort of pass the test. If not, it doesn't mean that the apparatus are out of service. It just means that if we draw a vacuum, it could potentially fail. But most of our area is hydrogen, so at this time, we don't have to worry as much about it. Typically, we draw pressure off the hydrant, so we don't really pull primes. But our mutual aid areas in Waterville Township, there's areas that are non-hydrogen. So if we were to, have to run a water shuttle or potentially pull a draft, it could work and it may not. It's one of those, and it may work for a while and then lose its prime and then you have to reprime it. It's kind of a delicate thing to try to explain. I mean, I could go very in depth with you. I mean, if you want to come up to the station, I could definitely show you one of our training nights, exactly what it takes to pull a prime and exactly how to do
you
it.
explained it very well. I have 2 questions. One, so these vehicles were not tested when the study was done, the recent study?
Correct.
Because they went through all the different equipment and
Sure.
apparatuses.
They were not due for testing.
So this was a visual inspection?
It was more, what do you have on your asset list? Like,
Yeah,
what
correct.
do you
All
have and
they
what
just
type,
asked was what
quantity
we
and
had
type?
and
They're probably
took
just
a
looking at
picture
the
of it.
reports.
It wasn't about that. We go through this testing once a year,
Mhm.
and what he's saying also on one vehicle is it may be not a huge fix, but a piece that, like
Correct.
gasket that's not a big deal, or it could be, but you do it every year to make sure that you have it. Almost everything we fight in Waterville, so no one gets the wrong idea, has a hydrant.
Correct.
So that is your pressure. So
Correct.
I'm not a
And-
mechanical engineer, but I got this part. But yeah, so they're getting it checked again.
Correct.
And it's a level, so it could be here like really bad, or it could be almost passing like one of them. So I would
Correct.
wait and see what he finds out next meeting. But otherwise, yeah,
Yes.
they did not check it though. They
Yeah, we're
just-
not out of service. Our rigs are not out of service,
Yeah.
except for engine 78
It's
is out
being
of service. It's
probably
in being worked on.
Worked
But I
on,
mean,
right.
other than that one,
Right,
I mean,
right.
we're in service. It will pump water out. It will put a fire
But
out.
this is when you find out once a year if you need any work.
Correct. This is when we find out if we need
Just
work.
want to make sure
I'm
everybody
letting you
knows
know.
that.
Correct. And I should have clarified
Yeah.
that. I'm
Just
letting you all
clarify that
know.
at the beginning, yeah.
So
Might
that
cost some
Well,
money.
okay, then
it
we-
might cost some money.
Okay.
I guess if I don't tell you now, though, when I come back and ask for it later, you're all gonna be like, why did I just
like
now
you
find
bringing
out
it
about
up,
it?
but
Yeah, yeah. Well, then that leads me to my second question then is fire hydrants. I
Mhm.
did read in your report that, and I talked to Kenny Blair about this, we have about 200 fire hydrants in the city. Is that accurate?
Oh, it's got.
200 plus.
He paints them.
And
Yeah.
they've fallen under, they haven't been maintained properly. Would we say that?
I can't totally answer for all the past years. I know the water department handles that. So Kenny would have to help me out with that.
Well, but
I
then
know
they
that we've
fell
done
short.
some flushing for them to help them out in the past. But we don't really do any,
Some of them would be new in the new areas, right? Okay.
I know when they're installed, they're all flow tested and meet
Yeah.
the requirements, cause I know
Yeah.
that they have.
And some would
issues
be
starting
older.
at one point.
Well, I
Some
don't have your report in front of me, but you specifically mentioned the fire hydrants. And you know what, this might have been the former chief's report from, boy, I'll have to look back, I was doing my homework.
There you go.
And, noticing that we do need to, I mean, if we're gonna be drawing our pressure from the pumps or the fire hydrants, then we really need to get on a schedule. of
Yeah,
maintaining those again.
as far as that would go, I would have to work with the Public Works Department on that. We only have one set of pitot gauges. That might actually be something that we even consider potentially contracting out. With the staffing levels we currently have, and the amount of hour restrictions they're on, to bring in people to try to go out and test those all day long to get actual readings, because it's a little bit of a process. A pitot gauge goes on one, you read a static pressure, you go down the line and have to read so many hydrants apart to read the flow pressure while you're reading the static pressure here. And it takes quite a few people to do that. So in order to do that, usually water departments will take care of that. Sometimes fire departments help out, kind of a little bit of a joint venture, if you will. But with a
We've
city
done 'em.
this big and the staffing level.
We did them both departments in the past, if I remember right. The fire would go out and public works together.
Sure.
You have all the inspection forms and all that?
I have some,
It's not that complicated, but I know what you're saying, that ain't the way we've done it, so it's a lot easier the way, that they did it when we checked. It was only a couple days a week, or a day, a couple days a week.
I know that we did, for 2 days a week, we did flushings. We went around and we would oil the top and we would open up the hydrant to get clear water out.
Right.
But to actually physically flow test a hydrant, you have to hook pitot gauges to it, and there's a formula. In fact, actually, we have it in emergency reporting. But that's
That's
all.
How
something
long
the
does it
water
take to
department does.
Do that. I had heard
That
like
would take a
15
while. He
minutes
just said that
each.
they take care of it, so Mr. Blair would take care of.
Okay.
Yeah, we
On
do
that
the
side of
actual flows. You do a soft flow, what I call a soft flow, clean the barrel before
Mhm.
you draw the hydrant out, and then just take a static pressure, and then grease the,
We greased the
tabs
fitting
at
in the top, yeah.
fitting in the top.
Okay, good. All the behind the scenes stuff, right?
Yeah, and that all depends on,
Infrastructure.
staffing level and run volume too. I mean, if we're, we've had several days, just like yesterday, we started with 3 runs before 10 o'clock. So I mean, by the time you catch those reports up, have lunch and get done, then your day's
Yeah.
pretty well, for the most part. I mean, then they have things that they have to do around the station. I mean, we have rigs we have to check and monitors and equipment that must be maintained. So it's kind of one of those,
Okay.
gotta make sure we have staffing.
All right, well, I'd like to talk further about this and just some ideas I have and way of getting that done then. Okay, with that, thank you.
Anything else?
I have a simple question, Doug.
Sure.
After all this technical stuff.
That's all right.
I just wondered what a good intent call, what does that mean?
A good intent call, are you looking at the report from emergency reporting? Without pulling the full report, it's hard. A lot of times, a good intent call means that a fire alarm went off in good intention, but we weren't actually needed. So it could mean that someone pulled an alarm thinking that there was a fire and there wasn't, without being malicious. So if someone does it because they want to evacuate a building, that's a malicious pull. A good intent call could be that, hey, they thought there was a fire over there and there wasn't. It was good intent. They wanted to evacuate the building, but.
So that's why you have false alarm as a separate category and then good
Yeah, a
intent.
false alarm is when the alarm activates itself. So like a false alarm would be like if a smoke detector decided to go off and there's no smoke around, there's nobody around, and it's going off and it activates us to come there. That's a false call. It's malfunctioning equipment. That's false. We shouldn't be there.
Thanks, Doug.
I guess I got a question along
Sure.
that line since you brought it up. So the newer report, you know, the first page of your report with the numbers is what we're used to. And there's always been the not transported where you go, but they don't need to go to the hospital or anything. You know, the 21 and the, and then it has Lucas County EMS 7 times, Waterville Fire Department 20. I guess
Well,
those,
that's Lucas County Life Squad 7 transported once, Life Squad 9 transported
Yeah,
5
5.
times, and Life Squad 10 transported once. That's because we don't always get Life Squad 9.
but they're,
Remember,
right,
county.
they send whoever. But
Mhm.
7 county transports.
Total, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So when you look at your other page, which is a different software, right, the next page, where it's broken down with the good intent call. So that says 38 rescue and emergency medical service, but it doesn't really match. Like if I try to figure out on the first page we were talking about, because I always look at how many we transport, how many we haven't, how many the county answered. So that number, the 38, is,
They match exactly here, so you have 48 total incidents at the bottom, and if you look at the total runs for the month, it's 48 on the other page on the left-hand side. They both add up. The
so
new
the
software
20,
breaks it down.
the 20 is, okay, it breaks it down different, I guess is what I'm
Yes.
saying. Like the
Correct.
20 for Waterville and the 21 not transported Waterville. It's
So
41, so that's the fire and the rescue? No, that's just EMS. See what I'm saying? Like the two don't really match up. Like when I've been looking at it the last couple of months, I'm like, the reports to me are a little bit different. I mean, I don't know.
So
I don't
you've
wanna make
got-
a big deal
You've
of
got
it, but
21 unspecified runs. You've
Right.
got 20 transports, makes 41. You've got 1 by Life Squad 7, makes 42.
Right.
You got 5 by Life Squad 9, makes 47, and 1 by Life Squad 10 makes 48.
But what is that, over here it says just EMS on those numbers, and then over on your report, it breaks it into fire. So this report this one I'm talking about that we've always had, doesn't break it, even though it says EMS, it's not
No,
fire.
this only breaks it down by just transport, and then,
This one adds fire on it, which
Yes.
would be the engines and the ambulance, I guess.
yeah.
But
and
then
it-
38, you see where I'm going, like,
Mhm.
I know the total number's the same, I
Yep.
get you there, but these really aren't. These are hard to correlate into that. So I'm just used to this one, cause this is what we always had, but I don't know, this one's a little bit different.
Eventually, the report on your left,
This
currently this report on, no, so if you, I guess, if you open it this way, so your report, the one that's labeled Waterville Fire Department at the top, alarm date between 4/1 and 4/31.
Yep.
That report will eventually go away. That's the firehouse report, and the only
Right.
reason we're currently using that is because we're still having issues with our payroll system because of the way we pay the firefighters now.
So you're tracking it there.
So she tracks it there, but that eventually will go away. It will go to this graph system that you currently see over here. We're actually using 2 systems right now instead of
To
monitoring
do the
one.
pay side, yeah.
Mhm.
All right, and then this back page, you probably do that page, the month to date, double tone, that's just something you're adding, that's not coming out of the system.
No,
Either
so
one.
the way that works is Jody takes all the numbers for the month, and we have an incident sheet that we fill out for each one, and she hand calculates that out. That was conveyed to her and me through Chief Wombo that was per the request of.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
all.
we did need to know the double tone outs for a while, for sure. You can
Sure.
keep doing those.
Okay.
What I don't like on the new one is I like to know what the county transports, and I like to know what we didn't transport at all. So if you look at the old report and you look at the new one, it just gives a total number, but it doesn't give us a breakdown of the picture of what was transported, how much the ambulances were actually taking them to the hospital, and who, it doesn't tell me who did it, like Lucas County on this one. So I'm back at the beginning again.
Yeah, I'm looking
But that's the
back.
part I didn't like so far, but again, I said I'm used to 16 years of this other one, but, can it break it down so we know who transported?
Our new system does track who transported.
Yeah.
She may have trouble printing it due to HIPAA requirements because it does track who transported, but it tracks it under the patient.
Because
So
you
she may
can't
not
do
be able
this.
to print the patient's
In the
name.
old one, you could do Lucas County, which squad, and that's all I mean, we don't, yeah, right, we don't wanna see the patient, but I don't know, I found that useful to understand
I will have to,
who was
like
coming.
now, we still can track who did it. She could go in and continue to do this by hand, just like she did. I mean, she
Right.
can go in and look at all the reports. As far as printing it out, I can make a note and ask her to call emergency reporting and see if there's a way we can get that report generated.
Maybe we can, yeah, maybe if it could just be broken down. This was helpful, the old report, but once you quit doing this, then see if it's actually able to be done. Just some differences to get used to, but that information was.
Is there a specific reason? The only reason I ask you that is because sometimes the data, the way we put it in, sorts it out differently. Is there a specific reason you want to know how many times the county versus us transported?
Yeah, in the old days,
Okay.
the county did a lot of the transporting.
Sure.
And when I started in 2002, we didn't go past St. Luke's, and they had to take everything. Or they took them to St. Luke's, and then they had to go from there. So we've really evolved and changed. But yeah, when we started, it was a lot different. So
Sure.
I mean, when I started, so
I didn't know if it was a billing issue, so I need to find that kind of stuff.
No.
I'm just trying to find out. So you're just
I was just trying
You
to
just
figure
wanna
out
know
who
county
was
versus us.
answering, who was transporting, who was, yeah, because it was always like half and half, or it was always the county. As the talks continue and the county is looking at their dispatching and their fire and their ambulances, I mean, they are talking about who's transporting the patients. So for
Yeah.
council, it's very important for us, I think, to know that.
We also have more paramedics than we have in the past too, so I mean.
I'm not saying anything about, that's good, we have them, but I guess what I'm saying is that's why, you asked why we look at that,
Sure.
that's why we did, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted
There
to
was
just
a point
get
in
you,
time where we didn't transport many of the patients.
yeah, I just wanted to get you the most accurate report possible,
Yeah.
so if I knew there was a
If the new
specific
software
reason.
can do it, exactly what it used to tell us, at least I
Well-
found it useful.
There was a point in time too when our rescue and emergency calls were primarily EMS runs. I mean, this is.
And it shows you that in the,
Yeah.
pie graph, 79.17% of all the
80%.
calls were,
Right. It's huge.
EMS. So almost 80% was EMS. And actually, if you look on the back side of the pie graph page, it breaks down exactly what your fire calls were. So if you look on the back side, it'll tell you we had one structure fire, one cooking fire, one brush, we had one other rescue, that could be anywhere from, an in-service assist to, river rescue, it just depends on how it gets put in. So the data in the new system can only be as accurate as the person putting it in. So if one firefighter classifies it as one thing and another classifies it as another,
Pop up different.
it's gonna pop up differently. Another reason why I ask you what you needed the transports for, because if one person puts it in a certain way and another person puts it in a different way, we're gonna get a whole different
Yeah,
kind of report.
it was more just curious how much the county actually transported, or White County out of White House.
But you
No.
won't get a different report about who transported.
No,
Well, no, it would depend on what they put it in as. So if they put it in as, like, let's say it was an in-service assist and then it turned out to be a transport later, if they put it in as an in-service assist because that's what initially was the first call, it's not gonna show that transport on the other side. Oops. Because it's gonna show it as an in-service assist because this data can only go off of what you put in for the NIFRS,
and you
which
have
is
to,
the national reporting system.
and you put it in when you get back, not,
And then, yes, correct, they put it in when they get back.
right. 'cause
So
they have to
it kind of goes off of, what each firefighter themselves puts in, and I can't be there when they do each single report.
Right, but the incident number total, the new report's a little bit different too, the detail. It's kind of similar, but, you show apparatus going, and
Correct.
obviously you have to, a lot of times with like fire, you have a lot of apparatus going.
Correct.
But then when it pegs like how many things went, how many calls you had, it's just that one call, whether it's 2 ambulances or a fire truck, and I
Correct.
think the old one coded it fire versus EMS, but yeah.
It did.
Okay.
The old one kind
'Cause-
of broke it down a little bit, but actually when Firehouse got bought out by ESO, they're going more to this reporting style too. It's what the
Right.
state's requiring.
I gotcha. It just shows it a lot differently, so, okay. Thanks. Anything else? Pork
Good
butter,
job.
chief, thank you.
Good job, Chief.
We learned a lot though tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Blair?
We're just getting warmed up.
We're gonna talk about hydrants now in water.
Thank you, Mayor Council. Mr. Dobby, thank you for the clarification on that draining issue Mark's having. Appreciate that. I've only got a few updates on my project report. The bridge project, once again, the water level came up above the causeway and did some damage. It was out of business about a week and a half before they could get back on it. Excuse me. However, they were able to pour the stem 7, which is the last stem, and I think they got the cap. I know they got the cap done because they were setting beams this afternoon. So that'll be the majority of the work, at least for now, on the causeway, and then they'll have to move it over when it gets time to do the removal of the old bridge. They'll have to use it again. John and I have a progress meeting tomorrow afternoon, and we'll get more information from them as far as the schedule, what their future plan is. So we'll try to give a report every at least once a month when I'm there.
Are they far behind with all the water, or you don't really know? Since
I think I think they moved the on the website, ODOT website, they moved it back to towards the end of October sometime, about a month. So.
It's a lot of water.
Yeah. The downtown street lighting project area, we've got a bid opening for that on May 29th. So that project will be starting pretty soon. Let's see. Page 1. This year's paving project, or program, resurfacing program, Cedar Lane and Disher Drive, that's in the plant design right now. So that'll be ready to go to bid probably sometime in June, we hope. So. The food trucks were in town Monday. I wasn't there. I don't know what kind of crowd they had.
Tuesday.
Or Tuesday, I'm sorry.
It was really cold out.
It was cold out, and I wondered
raining
if that.
I was there.
It wasn't real.
Was there many people there?
Yeah, there was people there.
There were people,
Okay,
but
good.
yeah.
Did you hear of any issues at the park?
I didn't.
Okay.
No, I did not. That's good. Saturday, we had a Public Works, not a Public Works, but a Park and Recreation Committee workday at Bear Park. I'll let Mr. Bruno speak to that. That's really all I have.
Any questions? Mr. Blair, Mr. Pedro?
You touched on two of my questions on the downtown lighting project. I know over the years, when we have these different events downtown, sometimes electrical power is an issue. Is any of that addressed when you do the street lights, or is that independent?
Yeah, the areas these lights are going, they're not going to have bands plugged into them.
Okay.
You know, or anything like that. Actually, the power is separate from the street light. That's a whole different wiring.
Okay.
So, and I did have a contractor put together some panels, if you will, to kind of separate the power when these bands plug in, so they're not blowing the circuit breakers in the clock tower all the time.
All right.
So far, it's worked out. So
So it sounds like-
basically, 3rd Street.
All right, sounds like you addressed it. And then the other thing is, you mentioned that June, hoping to bid those 2 streets. And I know I asked the last time if there's any money left over from the budgeted allowance. When would you potentially do a 3rd street? A 3rd street, not 3rd street, but a 3rd street.
This year?
Yeah.
I don't know if we'd have time to get it put together right now. I don't know. I think we're maxed out of what we got right now, aren't we?
You know,
Stokes,
when we open bids, if the bids come in good, at that point, maybe we could ask for an alternate to add a side street or something like that, but we'd have to wait till the bid opening of
Right,
the street
okay.
project.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
We don't have additional funds
Right.
any more than what we got. So. Okay.
that's all I have. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Blair?
Just one quick thing, Kenny, you mentioned some stormwater runoff issues in Waterville Meadows. That was your fourth or fifth point down?
That was, yeah, subdivision plat,
The new
13,
area
14.
or the,
That was one of the letters I sent out to the developer. And they're about in compliance now, so everybody's kind of working towards getting in compliance. So when EPA comes around, you know, we don't get rid dump for anything, or the developer for that matter.
that doesn't, we're not exposed on that though, as far as EPA violations, the city.
Not at this point.
You were talking about Waterville Meadows, not Prairie Boulevard?
Yes.
didn't you? Okay. And that's not a problem over there on Prairie Boulevard, all the water, that's just because they're under construction right now?
Right.
Because there's a lot of water.
Yeah, they've got a lot of it pumped out.
Okay.
They pulled off the job for 2 weeks, so that's why they haven't had any activity out there.
Yeah. Just the
should be
water is way above the drains. I mean, it's
Yeah.
staying in its area, but
We-
it's all over out there. I don't know if there'd be any future problems as we had people in here tonight. I mean, it's,
Yeah, we've got an unusual amount of rainfall here lately.
yeah.
Yeah, we've got parks, you probably noticed Prairie Trails one. We still got standing water in the back part of that park, and then some areas in Bear Park too. So hopefully, this dry weather coming up, we'll be able to get in there. Because it's gonna be a lot tougher to mow.
Anything else? Thank you, Mr.
One other thing, Mr. Ghosh and I were talking about the backup for the Riverboat Pump Station. We do have their proposals. They're looking at about 2-week turnaround before that can be installed. So that's pretty quick for that company. So that'll be good. Other than that, I really don't have anything else.
Sounds good. Thank you. Next, we have communication from council. Start with Mr. Bruno.
Yeah, so as Kenny said, we had a Parks and Recreation cleanup day on Saturday. It was very successful. We painted 5 benches, painted a couple of the restroom doors at Bear Park, and then we also cleaned the tennis courts off and raked up some leaves. So very successful day. Thanks to everyone on the committee that helped.
Good. Mrs. Bruno?
Nothing this evening, Your Honor.
Mr. Fry?
Nothing this evening.
Mr. Rosick?
Same for me, Your Honor, thank you.
Mr. Pedro?
I have, all my questions have been addressed so far. Thank you.
Awesome. Mrs. Duncan?
I just have 2 things. One is I attended the Big Jack Russell movie at the Maumee Indoor Theater that was put on by 3rd Street Cigar. And I have to say it was excellent. So if you get a chance to see it, it's a local production. A lot of the interviews were done at 3rd Street Cigar. And John Henry announced at the beginning that he has started 3rd Street Records. And they've produced 3, I call them albums, but they're not really albums anymore, but 3, I guess, albums or CDs. I'll call them albums. And last year, and they were put up for some awards, and he had attended the Soul and Blues Grammys in Memphis 2 weeks ago, and 3rd Street Cigar took first place. They had the 3rd Street Records took first place for the blues album. And that was all the artwork and the production, the editing, everything was done in Waterville or at BGSU. And so Mr. Henry was very proud of that, and I think, he deserves some congratulations from the city as he has continued to bring projects to us that have been very successful. And congratulations to that whole operation. Secondly, so the League of Women Voters puts out a lovely document that has everybody that's been elected, but we still have Jim Valentin on our council, Mr. Fry, so you might want to let them know that you're here now. And John, Jim Bagdonis is still our administrator in 2019, so somebody needs to get this, corrected for going forward. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mrs. Duncan. I have one item from our special meeting, council meeting we had April 29th with White House and the Waterville Township we discussed the feasibility study for a fire district. We all came to a consensus that we needed to put a group together, sort of similar to the Union Cemetery that we did, and we needed to start to look at actual staffing and numbers and things like that the feasibility study did not have in it. And at that time, we said we would have a committee of 10 individuals, 4 from the city and the village of White House, and 2 from the township, and then the chiefs and the administrators, or our retired administrator, potentially, one or the other. So it was a total of 10. So I want to propose this evening that I wanted to appoint myself to that committee to help with it, as I've been helping Jim Bagdonis and I started probably a few years back looking into it when we did have some issues with staffing. And also Mr. Rosick, I believe he said he would be interested in doing it. So I'd open that up for some discussion and then ask for a motion. And we would have our 2 people. We did not set a future meeting. Everybody was going back to their entity and choosing a couple people, and then we'll set a meeting. They will be open to the public. Other people can come, residents, whoever wants to come. We also did this in Waterville for the park that will be downtown when the bridge is complete, the park that we'll work on. And other people did come. It's not a problem. It's a public meeting. So, council, any comments?
Thanks for stepping up, Mr. Rosen.
You know, when the mayor calls, you don't.
Yeah.
I'm very confident
Yes.
that these 2 appointees will ask some very good questions and probe and, you know, take it to wherever we need to go, explore every option. That's what you guys need to do for us. So, yeah, I would move to approve you 2 being appointed on that party of 10.
Called a special committee.
Special committee, yes.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Any other discussion, comments, questions? All right. All those in favor of roll call? You want a roll call? All right. Do a roll call, Melissa.
Mr. Rosick?
Can I vote on this, council?
Yeah, can we vote
Sure.
on ourselves?
Yes.
Yeah, you're not
Yes.
getting any remuneration.
Yes.
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 Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Yes.
And just to reiterate, we'll be looking at all the options and getting together, and everyone will be invited. We'll have our fire personnel there. So. Next, we have old business, and we have none, surprising. But under new business, we do have a couple ordinances. Ordinance 07-19, an ordinance amending ordinance 05-19. The amended FY 2019 annual appropriation ordinance and declaring an emergency. And Mr. Gokenauer, do you have a summary of that?
Sure. As we do every year, we amend the budget from time to time, and this is our 2nd amendment of the year. The main issue that you can see in the amendment is we did have a project, the water meter project. It's the radio read canopy system, and our grant application was delayed, or our grant money that we were supposed to receive in 19 was delayed until 2020. So we're taking the revenue and the expense out of the budget for that, and that's a negative $136,480 in revenue, and the total expense change is a negative $394,377. And then there's some other items in the expenditure category. One thing I did want to point out is we didn't carry over the cost of the fire study, and we have received the invoice for that, and we'll be billing the township and White House, but that was not included. And then we inadvertently paid a lighting bill twice, so we had a very large expenditure in our street lighting. So we have to appropriate money for that. We were reimbursed by Toledo Edison for our double payment, and then we also are still waiting to be reimbursed from the developer of the Parade Boulevard extension. The lights haven't been installed yet, so we haven't been reimbursed for that yet. And then, as the fire chief pointed out, we did receive a grant from Nexus, and we included the appropriation of the Nexus grant into the fire capital fund for additional turnout gear, gloves and hoods. Other than that, some items that we always adjust from time to time in the budget.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? All right, we need to pass this as an emergency. So I move that the rules be suspended to allow for the passage of ordinance 07-19 as an emergency measure, and I need a second.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Petro?
Yes.
Ms. Duncan?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mayor Brody?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Rozak?
Yes.
Now I'll move for final passage of ordinance 07-19, first and final reading as an emergency measure.
Second.
And is there any further discussion or questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rozak?
Yes.
Mrs. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mayor Brody?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Ms. Duncan?
Yes.
Yes.
Next, we have Resolution 16-19, a resolution authorizing the transfer of cash funds from the General Fund 100 to the SCMR Fund 210, the Employee Retirement Benefits Fund 275, and the 5-year Capital Fund 325, and Storm Sewer Fund 660. Do you have any summary on that, or it's just the other?
Every year in the budget, we have transfers that we appropriate. The auditor of state asked that although it's appropriated in the budget and you passed a ordinance authorizing those transfers, that the council also do a resolution at the time the transfers are made.
All right. We need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, we have executive session for consideration of a matter per Ohio Revised Code 121.22G2 to consider the purchase or sale of property. We need a motion to go into executive session.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Brody?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Ms. Duncan?
Yes.
Mr. Petro?
Yes.
Mrs. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Rozak?
Yes.
Thank you. There'll be no further business conducted after we adjourn.
So the guys at the